Hello and welcome to Engaging the Love, a podcast for parents who are busy. This episode is one of biblical study. We will be taking a practice of what is called Lexio Divina. It is a time where a short passage is read multiple times and 3 questions are asked to be reflected on. The process of this will be we will invite you to listen and then to reflect on the question 1. And then there will be some musical interlude for you. And then those who are reading the reading for this week will then comment. And then you'll hear it again from a different voice. And so this will take place 3 times throughout our discussion for today. The questions that will be asked will be: what word or phrase stirs your thoughts or ideas? As you listen, what word or phrase from the reading speaks to you, and how do you share that? The second question is: what feelings are being touched by this passage? As you listen, what stirs? What invites you? What response do you have emotionally to this passage? And the third question will be: what is the Spirit's invitation to action for you from this passage? As you hear this passage, as you think about this passage, where is God calling you to act? Where is God inviting you to participate in the work of God in this place? So we invite you, as we go through our 3rd episode, to hear from Pastor Lauren Applegate, who is a Evangelical Lutheran Church in America pastor in the Northeast Pennsylvania Synod and is a Synod outreach coordinator for a program entitled Free to Be. You will also hear from VQ, Allegheny Evangelical Lutheran Church's Director of Children and Family Ministries, and Deacon Diana Luscombe, who is the Children and Family Coordinator for St. John's Lutheran Church in Sinking Spring. We give thanks for them and their willingness to participate in this episode, and for you to take this time to share in a time of biblical study and reflection as we hear from Galatians chapter 3, verses 25 to 29 this day, and as we share in this time of Lexio Divina.
Galatians chapter 3, verses 25 through 29. But now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian. For in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all of you are one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. The word or phrase that stirs thoughts or ideas for me.
What word or phrase stirs your thoughts or ideas? For me, the words belong to Christ. Stir up the thoughts of belonging, of love, of thoughts of releasing the things that bind us. Because if I don't belong to my past actions, I belong to Christ. Like that for me does a whole lot of mental unraveling. So the shame, guilt I carry around have the ability to be let go of and cast out.
Now, as I read this passage, it's just coincidentally that it comes at a time where the word baptize and faith was presented in my life. Recently, my 14-year-old daughter, had witnessed an adult baptism with her friend, and she came home and she asked me, why do we, as Lutherans, baptize infants versus adult? And at the time, I simply shoved off the question and just told her, because Lutherans has always done it that way.
Is clothed. I'm drawn to clothed. I think about how every evening I choose what I'm going to wear tomorrow. I pull things out of my closet and set them in the bathroom with care, out of the way, but easily accessible. We have a practice of clothing ourselves every day, twice a day, if we wear pajamas. And I wonder if it might be helpful for me to think about Christ as I'm choosing clothes from my closet each evening and as I'm putting them on in the morning, to be reminded that I am in fact clothing myself in Christ. That in my baptism I was washed clean, and now I'm able to choose every day to follow Christ, to listen for Christ's call in my life.
Galatians chapter 3, verses 25 to 29. But now that faith have come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinary. For in Jesus Christ, you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. But there is no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Jesus Christ. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise.
What feelings are being touched by this passage? The feelings that I experience reading this text are ones of welcome and love and God's inclusion. I feel welcome.
What feelings are being touched by this passage for me? When I think about clothed, I think about comfort. I'm not one for fashion, I'm one for comfort. And maybe sometimes putting on Christ would be a little uncomfortable. Knowing that I'm a sinful human, I think I'm moved to feel uncomfortable when I think about wrapping Christ around me, feeling Jesus all over me. Discomfort. Faith is often stirring uncomfortable moments, moving us into places of discomfort. But clothes also offer security and safety from the elements. So while at the same time Jesus might make me feel uncomfortable or moved to discomfort because of my imperfections, I also know that being clothed in Christ offers me security and safety and comfort.
But now that I read this passage, what sits with me or stirs my thought is that in Jesus Christ, we are all children of God through faith. That was the key word, faith. And with faith, it doesn't matter whether we are Lutheran or whether we are different denominations. It doesn't matter if we were baptized as an infant or if we chose to be baptized as an adult. Through faith alone, I do believe that we accept Jesus Christ into our lives. And with that, there is no longer any separations among all denominations or genders or cultures or background, because we are all one in His glory. And that's what really stood with me with this passage, is that
Galatians 3, verses 25 to 29. But now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian. For in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all of you, there is one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise.
I believe the Spirit's invitation to action for me from this passage is really to consider, in that ritualistic act of choosing clothes, to consider Jesus as someone who has chosen me every minute of every day, and yet needs to be a choice for me to make every minute of every day. Knowing that I won't be perfect, but also knowing that I'm free to try again and again and again. That each day when I put on my comfortable clothes, when I put on the clothes that will keep me safe, that I'm also putting on Jesus. Perhaps making a sign for my bathroom mirror. Clothe myself with Christ. Choose to look through the lens of Jesus in the morning, realizing that it may fall away at some point during the day, but that I can always pick it back up. Clothing myself with Christ.
It really is that simple, that if you allow your faith over your fear or your misunderstanding, then he will show you the words and he will show you his promise. And that to me is what I got out of this passage.
What is the Spirit's invitation to action for you from this passage? I hear the invitation to consider ourselves as beloved first, as part of Abraham's promise first, in a world that expects a lot from parents, from people, and in a world that expects perfection in a lot of ways. This text is inviting me to see myself as one clothed in the love of Christ, as one clothed in the embodiment of God's awesomeness. And that's pretty cool. That's a life work to do. And also, I think goodness and the light of Christ shines through that work.
I'd like to thank you for spending some time with us as we dive into this passage. I'd like to thank Pastor Lauren, Deacon Diana, and V as they shared their readings, but also their thoughts on this passage. We hope that it has enlivened you, and we invite you to share those thoughts, to journal about them, to spend some time in prayer as you continue to live into this calling as parent, as spouse, as child of God who is invited to hear the promise that God has for you, to hear the hope that God has for you, and to trust that we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian, but through God's love, God invites us into a new relationship, into promise, into hope, into being uplifted by the grace of God through Christ, and that we are all beloved in God's eyes. So we give thanks for you for spending some time with us as we encounter the love of God together, and we invite you to join us next time as we share about God's action in and through us and living out our faith in action, as we share encouraging the love of God with one another and with those around us. We look forward to our next episode and to you joining with us for that as we move forward. God bless.